love. It's the most profound emotion we experience, yet it's also the one that leaves us most vulnerable. Why do we fail at love? Why do we repeat the same mistakes, fall into the same traps, and feel the same heartbreak over and over again? What if the answer lies not in our hearts, but in our minds? Today, we'll explore the philosophical and psychological roots of love's failures, guided by two of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, Sigmund Freud and Simone de Beauvoir. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why love fails, you'll also see how to break the cycle. Let's start with a simple question. Why does love fail? Is it because we choose the wrong people, or is it because we don't know how to love? Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, would argue that our failures in love are deeply tied to our unconscious mind. According to Freud, our earliest relationships, especially with our parents, shape how we love as adults. But here's the twist. We often seek out partners who remind us of those early relationships, even if they were unhealthy. This is what Freud called repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to repeat past traumas in the hope of resolving them. But what if the problem isn't just psychological? What if it's also philosophical? This is where Simone de Beauvoir comes in. In her groundbreaking work, The Second Sex, de Beauvoir argued that love is often distorted by societal expectations and power dynamics. She believed that many of us fail at love because we're trapped in roles, like the romantic hero or the devoted lover, that prevent us from seeing each other as equals. So the question becomes, are we failing at love because of who we are, or because of who we're taught to be? Let's dive deeper into Freud's perspective. Freud believed that our unconscious mind is like an iceberg. What we see on the surface is only a small part of what's really going on. And when it comes to love, our unconscious is often calling the shots. For example, Freud's concept of the Oedipus complex suggests that our earliest attachments to our parents influence our romantic relationships later in life. If you had a distant father, you might unconsciously seek out emotionally unavailable partners. If you had an overbearing mother, you might struggle with intimacy because it feels suffocating. But here's the catch. Freud believed that these patterns aren't just random. They're attempts to resolve unresolved conflicts from our past. The problem is, we're often unaware of what's driving us. This is why so many of us find ourselves stuck in cycles of heartbreak. We think we're choosing love, but in reality, we're chasing ghosts. Now, let's turn to Simone de Beauvoir. While Freud focused on the individual psyche, de Beauvoir looked at the broader social and cultural forces that shape how we love. In The Second Sex, she argued that love is often corrupted by inequality. For example, in traditional relationships, men are often cast as the hero or provider, while women are expected to be the nurturer or caretaker. These roles, de Beauvoir argued, prevent us from seeing each other as fully human. Instead of loving each other as equals, we end up loving an idea, a fantasy of what love should be. De Beauvoir also believed that love requires freedom, not just the freedom to choose who we love, but the freedom to be ourselves within that love. But here's the challenge. How do we love freely in a world that's full of expectations and constraints? This is where de Beauvoir's existentialist philosophy comes into play. She believed that love, like life, is a project, a constant process of becoming. And if we want to succeed at love, we have to be willing to confront our fears, challenge our assumptions, and grow into the people we're meant to be. So, how do we break the cycle? How do we move from failing at love to truly understanding it? The answer lies in self-awareness. Freud taught us that we need to confront our unconscious patterns, while de Beauvoir reminded us that we need to challenge the societal scripts that limit us. Together, their insights offer a roadmap for love that's not just passionate, but also authentic and free. Imagine a love where you're not chasing ghosts or playing roles. Imagine a love where you see each other as equals, where you're free to be yourselves, and where you're both committed to growing together. This is the kind of love that Freud and de Beauvoir envisioned. A love that's not just about finding the right person, but about becoming the right person. Love is not a destination, it's a journey. And like any journey, it requires us to confront our fears, question our assumptions, and grow into the people we're meant to be. Freud and de Beauvoir showed us that love's failures are not random. They're rooted in our deepest fears, desires, and beliefs. But understanding these roots is the first step toward breaking the cycle. So the next time, what if the very idea of love we've been sold is flawed? What if the fairy tales, the rom-coms, and the societal narratives about happily ever after have set us up for failure? Freud would argue that these cultural stories often feed into our unconscious desires, reinforcing the fantasies we've carried since childhood. Think about it. How many of us grew up believing that love is supposed to be effortless, that the right person will complete us, or that love should feel like a constant high? These myths, while comforting, can be deeply damaging. They create unrealistic expectations that no relationship can ever live up to, leaving us disillusioned and heartbroken when reality inevitably falls short. Simone de Beauvoir would take this a step further. She believed that these cultural narratives aren't just misleading, they're oppressive. They trap us in rigid roles and scripts that limit our ability to love authentically. For instance, the idea that men should be stoic and dominant while women should be nurturing and submissive isn't just outdated, it's harmful. It reduces love to a power struggle where one person's needs are prioritized over the other's. De Beauvoir's solution: to reject these scripts entirely and create a new kind of love, one based on mutual respect, equality, and freedom. But how do we do that? How do we unlearn everything we've been taught about love and start anew? Let's pause for a moment and consider this. What does it mean to love someone as an equal? It means seeing them not as an extension of yourself, not as a means to an end, but as a fully autonomous individual with their own dreams, fears, and desires. It means letting go of the need to control or possess them, and instead embracing the beauty of their independence. This is what de Beauvoir meant when she wrote, "In love, the one who loves is no less free than the one who is loved." Love, in its truest form, is not about losing yourself in another person. It's about finding yourself alongside them. But here's where Freud's insights become crucial. Even if we intellectually understand the importance of equality and freedom in love, our unconscious mind might still be working against us. For example, have you ever found yourself clinging to a relationship that was clearly unhealthy, or pushing someone away because you were afraid of getting too close? These behaviors often stem from deep-seated fears and insecurities that we're not even aware of. Freud called this the repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate the dynamics of our past, even if they were painful. It's as if we're trying to rewrite the script of our childhood, hoping for a different ending this time. But unless we confront these patterns, we're doomed to repeat them. So, how do we break free? The first step is self-awareness. We need to examine our past, not to dwell on it, but to understand how it's shaping our present. What patterns do you see in your relationships? Are you drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable, or do you sabotage relationships when they start to get too close? These behaviors aren't random. They're clues to what's going on beneath the surface. Once we identify these patterns, we can start to challenge them. This is where therapy, journaling, or even honest conversations with trusted friends can be incredibly powerful. But self-awareness alone isn't enough. We also need to take action. This means making conscious choices that align with the kind of love we want to create. For example, if you tend to lose yourself in relationships, Practice setting boundaries and prioritizing your own needs. If you struggle with vulnerability, take small steps to open up to someone you trust. And if you find yourself repeating the same mistakes, pause and ask yourself, what am I really looking for in this relationship? Am I seeking love, or am I trying to fill a void that only I can fill? This brings us to one of the most profound insights from both Freud and de Beauvoir. Love is not something you find outside of yourself. It's something you cultivate within. Freud believed that true love requires a healthy relationship with oneself, free from the shadows of unresolved trauma. De Beauvoir, on the other hand, saw love as an ongoing project, a dynamic process of growth and self-discovery. Together, their ideas point to a radical truth. The key to love isn't finding the right person, it's becoming the right person. Imagine a love where both partners are committed to their own growth, not out of selfishness, but out of a deep respect for themselves and each other. Imagine a love where conflicts are seen as opportunities for understanding rather than threats to the relationship. And imagine a love where both partners are free to be themselves, knowing that their individuality is not a threat to the relationship, but its greatest strength. This is the kind of love that Freud and de Beauvoir envisioned. A love that's not just about passion, but about partnership, not just about romance, but about reality. But let's be honest, this kind of love isn't easy. It requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to confront the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. It requires us to let go of the fairy tales and embrace the messy, imperfect beauty of real relationships. And it requires us to see love not as a destination, but as a journey, one that we're all still figuring out. So, the next time you find yourself asking, "Why do I keep failing at love?" remember this. Love's failures are not the end of the story. They're the beginning of a deeper understanding of yourself, of others, and of what it means to truly love. And while the journey may be challenging, it's also profoundly rewarding. Because in the end, love isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about growth. And most of all, it's about becoming the kind of person who can give and receive love in its truest, most authentic form. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's continue this conversation in the comments below. What's your biggest struggle when it comes to love? Let's explore it together. Until next time, remember, love is not something you find. It's something you create, and the power to create it is yours. What if the very act of falling in love is less about the other person and more about ourselves? Freud would argue that love is a mirror, a reflection of our deepest desires, fears, and unmet needs. When we fall in love, we're not just seeing the other person, we're projecting onto them the qualities we long for or the wounds we hope they'll heal. This is why the early stages of love often feel so intoxicating. It's not just the other person we're enamored with, it's the version of ourselves we become when we're with them. But here's the problem. Projections are illusions. They're based on our fantasies, not reality. And when the illusion fades, as it inevitably does, we're left wondering, what went wrong? Simone de Beauvoir would add another layer to this. She believed that love becomes toxic when we use it as a means of escape, a way to avoid confronting our own existential loneliness. In her view, many of us fall in love not because we truly see the other person, but because we're trying to fill a void within ourselves. We think love will save us, complete us, or give our lives meaning. But de Beauvoir warned that this kind of love is doomed to fail. Why? Because it places an impossible burden on the other person. No one can be your savior, your therapist, and your source of meaning all at once. And when they inevitably fall short, we feel betrayed, not by them, but by our own unrealistic expectations. So, what's the alternative? How do we love in a way that's real, not illusory? The answer lies in what de Beauvoir called authentic love. Authentic love isn't about losing yourself in another person. It's about finding yourself alongside them. It's about seeing the other person as they truly are, with all their flaws and complexities, and choosing to love them anyway. And it's about taking responsibility for your own happiness, rather than expecting someone else to provide it for you. But here's the challenge. Authentic love requires us to confront our own insecurities. It requires us to let go of the fantasy of being completed by someone else, and instead embrace the reality of being whole on our own. This is where Freud's insights become invaluable. He believed that the key to healthy love lies in resolving our inner conflicts, the unresolved traumas, fears, and desires that shape how we relate to others. For example, if you struggle with abandonment issues, you might cling to relationships even when they're unhealthy. Or if you have a fear of intimacy, you might push people away before they can get too close. These patterns aren't just habits, they're defenses, ways of protecting ourselves from pain. But in the process, they also prevent us from experiencing true connection. Breaking these patterns isn't easy. It requires us to face the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore, the wounds we've buried, the fears we've avoided, and the desires we've denied. But here's the good news. The very act of confronting these shadows is an act of love, not just for yourself, but for the people you care about. When you heal your own wounds, you stop projecting them onto others. When you confront your fears, you stop letting them control your relationships. And when you embrace your desires, you stop expecting someone else to fulfill them for you. This is the paradox of love. The more you focus on yourself, the better you become at loving others. It's not selfish, it's necessary, because you can't give what you don't have. If you don't love yourself, how can you truly love someone else? If you don't know yourself, how can you truly know someone else? And if you're not free within yourself, how can you create a relationship based on freedom? This brings us to one of the most profound questions of all. What does it mean to love freely? For de Beauvoir, freedom is the foundation of authentic love. It means loving someone not because you need them, but because you choose them. It means respecting their autonomy, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, and it means being willing to let them go, if that's what's best for both of you. This kind of love isn't possessive or controlling, it's liberating. It's the kind of love that allows both people to grow, not just as a couple, but as individuals. But let's be honest, this kind of love is rare. Most of us are taught to love in ways that are possessive, conditional, or transactional. We're taught to see love as a contract. I'll give you this if you give me that. Or as a competition. Who loves who more? Or as a security blanket. Don't leave me and I won't leave you. These ways of loving aren't just limiting, they're suffocating. They turn love into a prison rather than a partnership. So, how do we break free? How do we move from possessive love to liberating love? The answer lies in shifting our mindset. Instead of asking, what can this person do for me? Ask, what can we create together? Instead of seeing love as a way to fill a void, see it as a way to expand your world. And instead of fearing loss, embrace the beauty of impermanence. Because the truth is, none of us can control how long a relationship will last. What we can control is how we show up in it, with openness, with courage, and with love. This is the kind of love that Freud and de Beauvoir envisioned. A love that's not just about passion, but about partnership. A love that's not just about romance, but about reality. And a love that's not just about finding the right person, but about becoming the right person. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because in the end, love isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about growth. And most of all, it's about becoming the kind of person who can give and receive love in its truest, most authentic form. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's continue this conversation in the comments below. What's your biggest struggle when it comes to love? Let's explore it together. Until next time, remember, love is not something you find, it's something you create, and the power to create it is yours. What if the pain we feel in love isn't a sign that something's wrong, but a sign that something's working? Freud would argue that love, by its very nature, is fraught with tension. It's a constant push and pull between our desire for connection and our fear of vulnerability. Think about it. When you love someone, you're giving them the power to hurt you. You're opening yourself up to rejection, betrayal, and loss. And yet, we do it anyway. Why? Because love is also the source of our greatest joy, our deepest meaning, and our most profound growth. In this sense, the pain of love isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the price we pay for something truly extraordinary. But here's where things get complicated. While Freud saw this tension as an inherent part of love, Simone de Beauvoir believed that much of the pain we experience in relationships is unnecessary. It's not the result of love itself, but of the ways we've been taught to love. For example, many of us are taught to equate love with sacrifice, to believe that if we're not giving up something for the person we love, we're not really loving them. But de Beauvoir challenged this idea. She argued that true love shouldn't require us to lose ourselves. In fact, the healthiest relationships are those where both people feel free to be themselves, without fear of judgment or rejection. This raises an important question. How do we distinguish between the necessary pain of love and the unnecessary pain of unhealthy relationships? Freud would say the key lies in understanding our patterns. Are you staying in a relationship because you genuinely love the person, or because you're afraid of being alone? Are you tolerating behavior that hurts you because you think it's normal, or because you've convinced yourself you don't deserve better? These are hard questions to ask, but they're essential if we want to break free from cycles of pain and create healthier, more fulfilling relationships. De Beauvoir would add another layer to this. She believed that much of the unnecessary pain in love comes from our inability to see the other person as they truly are. We fall in love with an idea, a fantasy of who we want them to be, and when they inevitably fail to live up to that fantasy, we feel betrayed. But here's the truth. No one can live up to a fantasy. People are messy, complicated, and imperfect. And if we want to love them authentically, we have to be willing to embrace that messiness.